Section 5 of Rewards and Fairies. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Peter Eastman. Rewards and Fairies by Rudyard Kipling. Section 5. Marklake Witches. The Way Through the Woods. They shut the road through the woods 70 years ago. Weather and rain have undone it again, and now you would never know. There was once a road through the woods, before they planted the trees. It is underneath the coppice and heath, and the thin anemones. Only the keeper sees that where the ring-dove broods and the badgers roll at ease, there was once a road through the woods. Yet if you enter the woods of a summer evening late, when the night air cools on the trout-ringed pools where the otter whistles his mate, they fear not men in the woods, because they see so few. You will hear the beat of a horse's feet, and the swish of a skirt in the dew, steadily cantering through the misty solitudes, as though they perfectly knew the old lost road through the woods. But there is no road through the woods. Marklake Witches. When Dan took up boat building, Una coaxed Mrs. Vincey, the farmer's wife at Little Lindens, to teach her to milk. Mrs. Vincey milks in the pasture in summer, which is different from milking in the shed, because the cows are not tied up, and until they know you they will not stand still. After 3 weeks, Una could milk Red Cow or Kitty Shorthorn quite dry, without her wrists aching, and then she allowed Dan to look. But milking did not amuse him, and it was pleasanter for Una to be alone in the quiet pastures with quiet-spoken Mrs. Vincey. So evening after evening she slipped across to Little Lindens, took her stool from the fern clump beside the fallen oak, and went to work, her pail between her knees, and her head pressed hard into the cow's flank. As often as not, Mrs. Vincey would be milking Cross Pansy at the other end of the pasture, and would not come near till it was time to strain and pour off. Once, in the middle of a milking, Kitty Shorthorn boxed Una's ear with her tail. "You old pig," said Una, nearly crying, for a cow's tail can hurt. "Why didn't you tie it down, child?" said a voice behind her. "I meant to, but the flies are so bad I let her off, and this is what she's done." Una looked round, expecting Puck, and saw a curly-haired girl, not much taller than herself, but older, dressed in a curious high-waisted, lavender-colored riding habit, with a high hunched collar, and a deep cape, and a belt fastened with a steel clasp. She wore a yellow velvet cap, and tan gauntlets, and carried a real hunting crop. Her cheeks were pale, except for 2 pretty pink patches in the middle, and she talked with little gasps at the end of her sentences, as though she had been running. "You don't milk so badly, child," she said, and when she smiled her teeth showed small and even and pearly. "Can you milk?" Una asked, and then flushed, for she heard Puck's chuckle. He stepped out of the fern and sat down, holding Kitty Shorthorn's tail. "There isn't much," he said, "that Miss Philadelphia doesn't know about milk, or for that matter butter and eggs. She's a great housewife." "Oh," said Una, "I'm sorry I can't shake hands. Mine are all milky. But Mrs. Vincey is going to teach me butter-making this summer." "Ah, I'm going to London this summer," the girl said, "to my aunt in Bloomsbury." She coughed as she began to hum. "Oh, what a town, what a wonderful metropolis." "You've got a cold," said Una. "No, only my stupid cough. But it's vastly better than it was last winter. It will disappear in London air. Everyone says so. Do you like doctors, child?" "I don't know any," Una replied, "but I'm sure I shouldn't." "Think yourself lucky, child." "I beg your pardon?" The girl laughed, for Una frowned. "I'm not a child, and my name's Una," she said. "Mine's Philadelphia, but everybody except Renee calls me Phil. I'm Squire Buxteed's daughter, over at Marklake yonder." She jerked her little round chin towards the south behind Dollington. "Surely you know Marklake?" "We went a picnic to Marklake Green once," said Una. "It's awfully pretty. I like all those funny little roads that don't lead anywhere." "They lead over our land," said Philadelphia stiffly, "and the coach road is only 4 miles away. One can go anywhere from the Green. I went to the Assize Ball at Lewes last year." She spun round and took a few dancing steps, but stopped with her hand to her side. "It gives me a stitch," she explained. "No odds, 'twill go away in London air. That's the latest French step, child. Renee taught it me. Do you hate the French Una?" "Well, I hate French, of course, but I don't mind Mamselle. She's rather decent. Is Renee your French governess?" Philadelphia laughed till she caught her breath again. "Oh, no. Renee's a French prisoner, on parole. That means he's promised not to escape till he has been properly exchanged for an Englishman. He's only a doctor, so I hope they won't think him worth exchanging. My uncle captured him last year in the Ferdinand privateer off Belle Isle, and he cured my uncle of a raging toothache. Of course, after that we couldn't let him lie among the common French prisoners at Rye, and so he stays with us. He's a very old family, a Breton, which is nearly next door to being a true Briton, my father says, and he wears his hair clubbed, not powdered. Much more becoming, don't you think?" "I don't know what Una began, but Puck, the other side of the pail, winked, and she went on with her milking. "He's going to be a great French physician when the war is over. He makes me bobbins for my lace pillow now. He's very clever with his hands, but he'd doctor our people on the Green if they would let him. Only our doctor, Dr. Brake, says he's an imp something. Worse than impostor. But my nurse says—" "Nurse? You're ever so old. What have you got a nurse for?" Una finished milking, and turned round on her stool as Kitty Shorthorn grazed off. "Because I can't get rid of her. Old Sissy nursed my mother, and she says she'll nurse me till she dies. The idea! She never lets me alone. She thinks I'm delicate. She has grown infirm in her understanding, you know. Mad, quite mad, poor Sissy." "Really mad?" said Una, "or just silly?" "Crazy, I should say, from the things she does. Her devotion to me is terribly embarrassing. You know, I have all the keys of the hall, except the brewery and the tenant's kitchen. I give out all stores, and the linen and plate." "How jolly! I love storerooms and giving things out." It's a great responsibility, you'll find, when you come to my age. Last year, Dad said I was fatiguing myself with my duties, and he actually wanted me to give up the keys to old Amour, our housekeeper. I wouldn't. I hate her. I said, no, sir, I am mistress of Marklake Hall just as long as I live, because I'm never going to be married, and I shall give out stores and linen till I die." "And what did your father say?" "Oh, I threatened to pin a dishclout to his coat tail. He ran away. Everyone's afraid of Dad except me." Philadelphia stamped her foot. "The idea! If I can't make my own father happy in his own house, I'd like to meet the woman that can, and I'd have the living hide off her." She cut with her long thonged whip. It cracked like a pistol shot across the still pasture. Kitty Shorthorn threw up her head and trotted away. "I beg your pardon," Philadelphia said, "but it makes me furious. Don't you hate those ridiculous old quizzes with their feathers and fronts, who come to dinner and